In Israeli society, there are three categories. And I'm being a little bit crude here. Category one is people who perpetrated the Nakba. These are older people, these are not very many left at this point. Category two are the people who are the Nakba deniers. And then category three is the Nakba apologists. And you'll have a very small fourth category that they're not apologists, they're not deniers, they recognize, but it was very, very, very small. And the reason that I'm focusing on it through the lens of the Nakba is because in order to live in Israel, you really have to kind of zone out from what you did in 1948. Right, you have to either have accepted that you did it, you have to deny that you did it, or you have to be an apologist for it. Right, that's the only way that you can do it because the remnants are still there. The people are still. It wasn't that long ago, so that's the only way that you can live in this society. And so the vast majority will be people who don't give two hoots about Gaza. There's a genocide going on 90 kilometers away, and they don't care about what's going on in Gaza. It could be the other side of the moon for all they care.
Salamat everyone. You are listening to Red Inverted Triangle. This show is about the ongoing struggle for liberation in Palestine, produced on the unceded lands of the Gadigal people. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Like Palestine, Australia is a ground zero of a genocide that has been occurring for over 200 years and continues to this day. From the river to the sea, this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. My name is Ahmed. I am a Palestinian living on this stolen land, and I'll be your host. This podcast aims to provide the Palestinian story, Palestinian narrative. It's necessary because we live in a heavily indoctrinated society where, as Palestinians, being able to speak, to tell our stories and narrate is the ultimate form of resistance. That's right, resistance, hence the name of our show, Red Inverted Triangle. Each week, we'll be bringing you different segments, such as news updates from Palestine, Palestinian music, interviews with Palestinian figures or non-Palestinian figures talking about Palestine, and everything else related to Palestine. Thanks for tuning in, and long live the resistance. This episode of Red Inverted Triangle, we are bringing you a conversation I've had with Diana Buttu. Diana Buttu is a Palestinian Canadian lawyer with an Israeli citizenship based in Haifa, Israel. She is the former legal advisor to the Palestinian Liberation Organisation PLO. Her podcast series, This Is Palestine, is produced by the Institute of Middle East Understanding and shines the light on the life of the Palestinians under occupation in the West Bank and Gaza, in particular during the current genocide in Gaza. This conversation took place on the 2nd of October 2025, just before the announcement of the recent ceasefire. I hope you'll find my conversation with Diana useful and productive. Enjoy. Diana, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thanks for having me.
I should probably, before we start, I should apologize for the low attendance today. There's a snap action today at the Sydney Town Hall, probably everywhere in Australia, in support of the flotilla. There was another snap action yesterday at the Sydney train station, Central train station. So, sometimes I can't help but I get more frustrated, more.
I'm good with the snap actions. I'm good with them being at the snap actions and not with me.
Yeah, But generally, I mean, we've been doing all these snap actions, we've been doing rallies, we've been doing webinars, we've been doing all these education. I feel like all these things have we been effective? Have we been effective over the past 2 years?
Yes. Okay. Let's step back. Ahmed, when we look at what's happening in Gaza and genocide, everybody wants this genocide to end. And we know that the only way that this genocide is going to end is if the flow of weapons ends. We know that. And we know that the only way that the flow of weapons is going to end is if either there is some, about face within political spheres, or if we make it that it becomes costly. There isn't going to be an about face within political spheres because Israel has become so ingrained within our governments, in our lives, etc. But we are making it costly. And what do I mean by that? These snap actions are important. What's happening, what happened yesterday and is continuing to happen right now in Italy is important. The fact that every single day there has been a protest in Morocco is important. Practically every week there has been a protest in London is important. All of these actions, in Colombia, the Colombian president is probably going to lose his election because of Palestine, because it's constantly raising the issue of Palestine. It's important. All of this is important because what it's doing is it's raising awareness. And I think we're not in a place any longer where no matter how much Israel is spending on TikTok and on Micmac and on whatever it is that they're spending on, there's no way that they're going to be able to recoup that image that they had from before. Is that going to stop the bombs right now? No. You and I know that. Everybody on this call knows that. But we continue to do what we continue to do because we have to. And so everything from the Samud flotilla to these actions that are happening to you name it, it's making it so that there is a cost now and that these politicians can't just ignore anybody any longer. And that they have to come up with answers. They can't just say, oh, well, Israel's a democracy. Israel has a right to protect itself. They can't do that any longer. They actually have to come up with answers. They have to come up with responses as to why it is that they continue to fund and continue to provide weapons to a country that is committing genocide. All right. So this is actually very, very, very important. And I know it feels. I live in Palestine, and I know, and I know you being from Gaza, it feels even worse for you, and you having family in Gaza. And I lived in Gaza for just a very short period of time. I only lived there for a year and a half, and it weighs so heavily on me. And so I can only imagine how it feels for you. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine, Ahmed. I can't even imagine. And at the same time, we have to keep saying that we have to just keep going. Ahmed, we have the weight that we have had to bear over the course of the past 80 years, but particularly the course of the past 2 years, is unbelievable. We've had to bear the weight of showing the world just the farcical system that we live in. We've had to show the world how inept media is. We've had to show the world that there is no free expression. There's no freedom of free speech. This has all been on our small little shoulders, right? As we're being bombed, genocide, famine, you name it, all right? So we just have to keep going. And it is having an impact. It is. And the last thing I'll say before I let you go to the next question is, we all know that Israel is going to try to do everything to kidnap. This is international piracy. This is a kidnapping, the largest kidnapping international kidnapping before our very eyes. We know that they're going to do that. And yet the way in which people in Gaza were looking towards this flotilla with just the 0.01% hope that it's going to make it in is again showing that that at least there's some international conscience that still remains.
Absolutely. I mean, the level of impunity that Israel is now, experiencing is just unbelievable. I mean, unprecedented, I would say. And I really agree with you. I mean, Gaza is now holding the mirror in front of the Western world, like they claiming, all these ethical values and so on and so forth. But I want to touch on something that happened just a few days ago that, kind of deceived the public into believing that, yes, this is a testament to 2 years worth of activism. Many people have been deceived to believe that this recognition, this, to my understanding, empty recognition, really. I do want to get into Trump's recent plan and all these things, but I mean, what does recognizing Palestine mean for the Palestinian, political structure, really? Like, how does it fit within, the envisaged future between the Jordanian River and the Mediterranean Sea? I asked that question to Dr. Ghada Karmi the other day. Are they preaching Oslo again?
They're preaching nothing. So, Ahmed, I want to step back a little bit and talk about and analyze what recognition means and why they're doing it. So one of the problems is that the Palestinian national movement, which has been embodied in the Palestinian Liberation Organization and then on the ground, the Palestinian Authority, it adopted the two-state framework back in 1988 and then formally in 1993. There's been no stepping away from that since. So in that 1988 and then, formalized in 1993 framework, their push then came in 2011 to have statehood recognition. That's what they've been wanting. That's it. And so in this recognition of statehood, what is it that they're wanting to be recognized? The West Bank and the Gaza Strip to be recognized as a Palestinian state. The problem is, of course, that we don't know what is actually being defined as the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Meaning that I know what it is. I know what the international legal definition is, and so on. But when they're recognizing the state of Palestine, are they recognizing it as the actual West Bank, all of it, including Jerusalem? Or are they recognizing just these little, area A's, which is 18% of the West Bank, and no Jerusalem? It's still not clear. So on a technical level, that's a problem. But I don't care about the technical stuff. I want to get deeper in. The question is, why now? And I think the why now is because they don't want to deal with genocide. They don't want to be focusing on their obligations to actually end genocide. And so instead, they're recognizing Palestine as kind of like a consolation prize. Instead of us doing anything to stop genocide, we're just going to give you this little cookie and, you can go sit in the corner, called state recognition. And again, this isn't to say that there aren't things that flow from state recognition, which I'll get into in a second. But my worry is that this is just the consolation prize, that it's just performative, that it's just a way of saying we're doing something when they're actually doing nothing. And here's the irony. As Palestine is being erased from the map, quite literally, the largest Palestinian city, which is Gaza City, has been practically erased from the map, is now the time that they're recognizing the state of Palestine. That's the irony of it. So that's my fear. My fear is that they're doing this as kind of the consolation prize, as a means of not doing anything to stop the genocide. Can things flow from state recognition? Yes, they can, which is everything from the fact that Israel has violated the state sovereignty, which means that they can put sanctions on Israel for building settlements, which means that they can stop the flow of weapons to Israel because it's violated the territorial integrity of another state. They can cut off trade relations. But these are all things that they could have done before as well. All right. So all to say that, it gives them now a new excuse to do it. But these are things that they could have done before. So yes, there are tools that flow from this idea of state recognition. But again, my worry is that they're doing it as just a means to avoid and evade their responsibilities. There is something, though, that's very important in this whole state recognition. As people are talking about state recognition, there's a lot of conditionality. And this idea of conditionality went out the window in the 60s with decolonization. And the fact that they're still trying to revive this concept of like, you have to behave and you have to look like you're good and you have to show that you're well behaved in order to be able to get a state. Again, that went out in the 60s and it shouldn't be revived. And quite like it's racist, it's repugnant, and should be, and absolutely should be rejected.
Absolutely. It's like colonial condescending sentiment.
Yeah.
I mean, I do want to drill a little bit deeper into this question, really, because to my understanding, and I might be wrong, I mean, are we experiencing a moment similar to the first Intifada here? This huge global mobilization. And to me, I feel that this recognition, it tries to co-opt this mobilization and also undermine the sentiment of resistance in the Palestinian struggle. Do you see it from that angle?
I see the Trump plan is doing that, less the recognition. Yeah. I see the Trump plan is doing that.
Yes. So, I mean, let's talk about the Trump plan. What is the best response to, the Palestinians should give to this Trump peace plan, concocted by Netanyahu and Tony Blair now is in the big picture, both arguably war criminals. And also, more importantly, what should we expect from the Arab masses? Forget about the dictatorship, the despots and the leadership. I mean, where are the masses in response to this plan?
All right, so I want to unpack things a little bit and talk about the 20 points. I'm not going to go through all 20 points, but I want to talk about the 20 points. And then I want to talk about the big picture and then, go a little bit smaller. All right. So the first thing is you started off by saying, how should Palestinians respond? Right. That's the problem. Is that why is it up to Palestinians to be negotiating an end to their genocide? That is precisely the problem. It's never happened in history. It shouldn't be happening now. But the way that this has been set up is that Palestinians are being forced to be in a position where they're being gaslit. Like, you either accept the plan that we've given you, or you accept being genocided. That's the way that it's been set up, right? Like, you either accept the plan as it's laid out, which is perpetual control and genocide and ethnic cleansing, which I'll get into, or you accept genocide. Yeah, either way, you're to be blamed for your own genocide. And so the problem is exactly in the way that you put out the question, which is how should they respond? We shouldn't be forced to respond. We shouldn't be in a position where we are having to negotiate an end to genocide. It's never been done in history. That said, let's unpack what this agreement, or with this plan, not agreement, what this plan says. And then I want to unpack why the responses have been the way that they have. So what this plan says is, it says that in exchange for the Israeli captives being released, that there will be 250 Palestinians released, 250 Palestinians who are serving life sentences, plus 1,700 Palestinians hostages who were picked up after October the 7th. And then that's it. Now, there are that we know of, over 10,000 Palestinians who are languishing in Israeli jails. They are being tortured. They are being raped. 450 of them are kids. Many of them are being held without charge, without trial. 120 of them are doctors and medics. And all that this is talking about is 1,700. We have no idea who it's going to be. No clue. We don't know if it's going to be medics. We don't know. No clue who it's going to be. So again, like, there's just no clarity about who is going to be released. And it keeps the vast majority of the Palestinian hostages kept in Israeli prison. The other thing is that in the agreement of the Israeli captors, they're also talking about releasing bodies. But Palestinian bodies continue to be held by Israel. And there are hundreds of them. All right. Including kids. And this is where you see, like, people want to be able to bury their dead. They want to be able to give them a dignified burial. Again, both sides. Like, you want to be able to give a big dignified burial. And again, in his press conference, Trump was really, like, focused on the Israelis, but no word on Palestinians. So that's part of it. Right now in Gaza, and you know this, Ahmed, more than 80% of Palestinians in Gaza are now on less than 18% of the land of the Gaza Strip. Before October of 2023, Gaza was the most densely populated place on earth. Imagine now that 80% of that population is left on less than 18% of that land. You can see how they've just been thrown into the sea, right? Like, being shoved and shoved and shoved and shoved. And so what this agreement says is that upon the release of the Israelis, that the Israelis will pull back. But again, it's not clear how much they'll pull back, when they'll pull back. There's no guarantees that they'll pull back. There's just nothing. In fact, all of the guarantees that are provided in this agreement are provided to Israelis and not provided to Palestinians. And so here's an example. Let's say that Ben Gvir and Smotrich, two people who are in the Israeli cabinet, let's say that these two, have a hissy fit, as they're known to do. And they say, no, we will not pull back. If you pull back, we're going to withdraw from the coalition and make the government fall. Do you seriously think that Netanyahu is going to say, oh yeah, okay, yeah, no, I'm totally going to pull back from the Gaza Strip, from the area that I'm supposed to in the Gaza Strip? Or do you think that he's going to remain? Of course he's going to remain, right? So again, there's no guarantees that he's actually going to pull back. The third thing that it calls for is the bringing in of some international force, completely and totally vague. We're not sure what it consists of. And in that international force, presided over by Tony Blair. I don't need to even get into Tony Blair. You all know. I don't need to go into, I don't need to waste my breath on who Tony Blair is. The problem is that why is it that Palestinians can't determine their own future? Why are we still stuck in this colonial mode after all of this? The next part of this is that, again, they say Hamas will have no role in governance. By the way, Hamas had said long ago that they didn't want to have a role in governance. So that's not the issue, but, that's their choice. And that if the Palestinian Authority behaves itself, then they can one day have a role in governance. And what do they mean by behaving themselves? They mean that dropping all of the cases that are before the ICC, not raising any claims of war crimes, not talking about war crimes. Then they can potentially have a role in Gaza. And then we can start having a path for a future to talk about the aspirations of Palestinians to have a state. This is what the agreement talks about in sum. In the interim period, in the beginning period, the bombs will stop. Supposedly, the bombs will stop, and supposedly aid will flow. Again, because it's so vague, there's nobody that's going to oversee how much aid comes in. And we already saw with the first ceasefire that happened in January, and that was much more robust, that countries like Qatar and the United Arab Emirates and all these countries that have not now signed off on this, that they weren't able to serve as guarantors for that agreement. So and they were written in as serving as guarantors. And now this one, they're not even serving as guarantors. So the whole problem with this plan is that it's very much a repackaged. I think it's an Israeli plan that's been repackaged to be an American plan, and it's just a repackaging of genocide, and effectively blaming Palestinians for their own genocide, with all of the ways that Israel can pull out from the agreement. And I keep saying, I've seen this horror movie. I know the ending. We all have. And this is why there's so much criticism of it. At the same time, why have so many states signed on? For two reasons. One, many of the states signed on because people just want to see the genocide stop, and they want to see aid flow. And you heard, for example, the Qatari foreign minister say, we just want the bloodshed to stop. We want to see aid flow. We want to see reconstruction. But I don't think they're focused on the bigger picture that aid is not going to flow. The bloodshed isn't going to stop, and there isn't going to be reconstruction. And the other bunch of people who've signed on is because they're looking for the out card. That's why people like Macron, for example, or like France, Holland, all these countries that were now starting to criticize Israel. They were looking for an out, and this is now serving as the out in the same way that Oslo served as the out for the first Intifada.
I want to focus on something that you mentioned about Hamas and the Palestinian future, the Palestinian political future, really. We all know that, Israel is trying to get rid of Hamas, but Hamas represents really something that is more generic to the Palestinian struggle, which is resistance, which PA has given up on. And this is the main concept. And that removing Hamas from future political structure in future Palestine is not going to solve the problem of that resistance, right? There's something else that's come up. So the question is, given the importance of inclusive representation of any path towards Palestinian liberation, does sidelining Hamas risk undermining the legitimacy of any future Palestinian government, and by extension weaken international solidarity efforts? The second part of this question is, how should grassroots organizations interpret that signaling from the PA?
Okay, so there's two different things here. So one is governance, and then the other is resistance. On the governance issue, Hamas a long time ago said they didn't want to have a role in governance in Gaza any longer. This came out way. This is not my words; these are their words, right? This is something that they said. But on the issue of resistance, they've said that they're not going to stop their resistance, and for good reason. People's histories or people's memories are short, and some people's memories are long. 1982, when the PLO gave up its weapons in Beirut, immediately afterwards was when the Sabra and Shatila massacre happened, right? And so again, this is the fear that if weapons are given up, that Israel will come in and perpetrate yet another massacre. And who's going to stop it? Who's going to stop Israel? If nobody stopped Israel from committing genocide, who's going to stop Israel from doing it again? So this is very much the fear. The Abbasis of the world would say, no, in order to be able to create a state, you have to abide by the obligations that are imposed on you. And at the same time, you're kind of left in a position where you're saying, well, if Israel has the ability to use these mass weapons, then we should have the ability to protect ourselves from these mass weapons. That's sort of the logic. And there is no answer to that. He doesn't have an answer to that.
Absolutely. But I want to widen it a bit more and talk about the Israeli society. Like, how is this unprecedented awakening to the Palestinian plight? We have 300,000 people march across the Harbour Bridge, a Sydney icon. It was a historic moment. I would go on a limb and say probably 60% of them did not know what the situation in Palestine was before October the 7th, 2023. So how is this whole global awakening, how is it received inside the Israeli society? I mean, you live in Haifa. Your neighbors are arguably storm Zionists.
How's it received? Oh, where do I begin? Oh, I don't even know where to begin. Okay. It's like I don't know where to begin. All right. So,
because we see on the social media, like people inside the Israeli society mocking those people who are advocating or putting themselves on the line or being arrested or being, demonstrating. Like, are we living in a dystopia? It's been 2 years.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to try to unpack it. So, so in Israeli society, I try to liken it to being that there are three categories, and I'm being a little bit crude here, but I want to be crude just so that people can understand the categories. Category one is people who perpetrated the Nakba. These are older people, these are not very many left at this point. Category two are the people who are the Nakba deniers. All right. And then category three is the Nakba apologists. Right. So those are the three categories. And you'll have a very small fourth category that, like, they're not apologists, they're not deniers, they recognize, and they're, but it was very, very, very small. And the reason that I'm focusing on it through the lens of the Nakba is because in order to live in Israel, you really have to kind of zone out from what you did in 1948. Right? You have to either have accepted that you did it, you have to deny that you did it, or you have to be an apologist for it. Right? That's the only way that you can do it because the remnants are still there. The people are still. It wasn't that long ago. It was only 77 years ago. There's still people who are alive. My mother, for example. So there's still houses. So that's the only way that you can live in this society. And so the people who I see fall into each one of those three categories. So the vast majority will be people who don't give two hoots about Gaza. There's a genocide going on 90 kilometers away, and they don't care about what's going on in Gaza. It could be the other side of the moon for all they care. And it's because they've lived in this world of being in one of these three categories. Do you see what I mean? And so that's what I mean by dystopian. That's the vast majority. But then you have another category of being the genocide perpetrators and the genocide deniers and the genocide apologists, right? And so in all of those, you have the people who are looking at it and are cheering it on. You have the people who are looking at it and saying, oh, well, we had to do it. And you have the people who are saying that there is no genocide. And it's particularly the case when you look at the issue of starvation. You'll have people who will say, there's no starvation. You'll have people who will say, yes, this is starvation and we have to starve them. And sometimes it's in the same newscast. Like you'll be looking at this and watching it, and it's in the exact same newscast that you'll watch this and see this and all of that. Why am I mentioning this? Because when they look around and see the international response, and believe me, Israelis have the same access to the exact same news that you and I have. Like, it's no different. They can access Jazeera just in the same way that I can access Jazeera. They can access all the same stuff. Like, there's no difference between the stuff that we can access. It's that they choose what they want to access versus the things that they don't want to access. And so when they see all of these international and now I'm generalizing, when many of them see these international solidarity, they feel like completely misunderstood, because again, they've lived in a world where you're in one of these three categories. So they feel like, well, why does the world misunderstand us? Like, what, we have to do this. We have to, again, because they live in one of these three categories. So, and then of course, there's always the claim of the brush of anti-Semitism, which the media will come up all the time. Like, if you turn on any newscast and you see a massive demonstration, if it's covered at all, it will be covered as an anti-Semitic demonstration. Right. That's kind of the way that it gets automatically labeled. So it's both a sense of like, oh, the world doesn't understand us, and then blaming the government for the world not understanding us, and as being as anti-Semitic. And it cuts across the board. It doesn't matter. It's not like doesn't matter religion. Like if you're religiosity or non-religious, it's kind of cuts across the board. It's not like confined to one. If you're super religious or not super religious, it sort of cuts across the board. Because this is what settler colonial societies do. Is there's a mechanism of brainwashing and of dehumanizing the indigenous, and that's what Israel has been very good at, is dehumanizing the indigenous Palestinian population in order to be able to be apologists for the crimes that have been that they've committed. So this is sort of this is I don't know how to describe it better than that. I mean, I can give you like little anecdotes in case you're interested, but this is the way that it's sort of played out, so that people can understand the bigger picture of how it is that people are behaving. There's one thing that's become very interesting, in all of this, is that there's now sort of emerging a new phenomena inside Israel of not just now the apologist, it's now the proud. Like genocidal and proud. And you'll find this primarily, and there's a link between sexism, racism, and I don't know what the other word is, like sexism, racism, genocidal, I don't know what the other word is, like where you'll find these women they're women primarily on TikTok, who are coming out and like trying to show how proud they are of what the Israeli army is doing. Like, you mess with us and we're going to mess with you. And, and so they're very proud of the actions that the Israeli army is doing. So that's a new thing that's emerged as well. One of the things that's been funny, or not funny, but been interesting for me to watch, is watching Israeli television has been like a really interesting thing. Because at the beginning of the genocide, you could see, for example, that there was an attempt to try to rationalize what was being done. So, for example, you would hear people say, we fired from this place because there was a Hamas fighter firing from this place. Okay, fine. And then it expanded into, we had to demolish all of these homes because we had to get a tank to go through this area. And now there's not even now there's nothing. Now there's not even a response. There's not even a we need to do it, or we need to, there's just nothing. And that's what I mean by when I say about starvation and famine, is that you'll get people who say there's absolutely nothing, no starvation, there's no famine. And then in the same newscast, you'll get people who say, yes, of course we're starving them. We have to starve them. And it'll be in the exact same newscast. Or when the Israelis killed a number of journalists, including Anas Sharif, there was, he's right wing, but an Israeli journalist who came out very proudly and said, yes, he said we should have killed him long ago. And when they attacked Doha, they were toasting one another with champagne. Or when they killed another 5 journalists after hitting a hospital, which itself is a war crime. It's like, what's the problem? So it's all to say that this is, I wanted people to understand just the way that the thinking is.
But those people who are proud of what they're doing in Gaza and cheering the genocide and, Nakba deniers and so on and so forth, where is that sentiment coming from? Is that religion? Because, there's this question, this question here as well is saying, what about those Israelis who suffered the Holocaust in Germany? Where do you categorize those people?
It's all kind of the same, again, it's the same structure. It's the same 3 categories. And again, I'm being very crude in my categories, but just so that you can understand the way that the thinking is that it is, and this is not unique to, this is the way settler colonial societies work, but just so that you can see the way that the thinking is that you're either a person who perpetrated it, or you're a person who denies it, or you're a person who's an apologist for it. And in today's society, there are a lot of people who are cheering it on. Now, I want to be clear also, because then your follow-up question was probably going to be, well, why are so many Israelis protesting? Because there are a number of Israelis protesting. But it's important to keep in mind that the people who are protesting because they want to see an end to the war, but not necessarily that out of love for Palestinians. This isn't like we want to see an end to genocide. It's increasingly more becoming aware, but it's still very much framed in the mindset of end of war. It's very much framed as why are our boys still going out to this war? Why is it that they're coming back wounded? It's all about the statistics about how it's impacting them. 1,000 coming back wounded per month. The cost that it's incurring to society, the impact globally on Israel, or the impact globally on Israel's image. It's the fact that that this is continuing. It's not being framed in a we are flattening a society, we are committing genocide. That's not in the cards. The entire time that I've seen the protests, I think I've seen maybe 1-2 signs that are end the genocide, but they're few and far between.
The reason why, thank you for asking that question, because that was indeed my next question, and I just wanted to put it in the framework of because there's this argument that is saying, I've been hearing it more and more recently, that there's this inherent division in the Israeli society, and the genocide in Gaza has compounded this division. Is there some truth in there? Could these kind of expanding divisions within the society all impact eventually the Israeli regime and lead us to an end to the genocide?
There are divisions within Israeli society, but they're not over this. The divisions inside Israeli society right now are over a few things. So one of them is that there's a large number of Israelis who don't go to the Israeli army because they fall within the category of being the ultra-Orthodox, and so as a result, they're exempt from going to the army. And at a time when this is now 2 years, and I think I don't remember the exact number. I think they're on their 4th or 5th round of reserves. There's a lot of resentment of like, well, why do we have to go 4 and 5 times? And this segment of society hasn't gone at all. So that's where there is division within the society. There's always been a division within the society about, again, between these two, in terms of benefits, like which group gets benefits, which group doesn't get benefits. There's this discourse which I don't really care to get into about, oh, they're living off of the state. It's a discourse that I don't really care to get into. So there's that division that's going on, but not beyond that. And one of the things, Ahmed, that I think is important to look at is if you look at the public opinion polls in terms of 2 things. One is where people stand vis-a-vis Gaza, and then if there were to be elections tomorrow. So vis-a-vis Gaza, there was a poll that came out, it was 6 months ago, but I don't think it's changed that much, which said that 82% of Israelis would like to see Gaza ethnically cleansed. That's a high number. All right, that's not like, that's high, right? It's 4 out of 5. And actually in that same poll, it was something like 56% said that they would like to see Palestinians who hold Israeli citizenship also ethnically cleansed. And that if you go younger, to the younger generation, under I think it was under the age of 35, the number jumps to 66%. So this is like, it's existential. So that's one. But then the second thing is, if you look at the public opinion polls on voting, if there were to be an election tomorrow, Netanyahu still commands a lead, right? He still commands a lead, and the right wing will still be able to form a coalition. So the divisions that people are talking about, yes, there are divisions, but it's not as stark as people make it out to be.
This is unbelievable. These statistics, you can't make it up even. This is a question about what we in the West externally to Palestine can do. I mean, we've been talking about BDS. BDS has been going on for, 20 years now. They celebrated the 20th anniversary a couple of months ago. Every single time there's a minor genocide or a full-blown genocide like what's happening, we see an increase in the uptake of BDS around the world. Are these practical measures that people do and push for sanctions and so on and so forth, are they likely to make any difference, given the U.S. support, the U.S. blind support to Israel and the thriving defense industry in Israel, which is a big one? Francesca Albanese released that report. It's just mind-boggling that, the economy in Israel, because of the defense industry, is thriving. So is BDS movement making any gains given all these kind of things that are at play in Israel?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you can see the gains in practically every segment, in every industry. And that's what is worrying them. Right? That's why there's so much money that's been invested into all the anti-BDS efforts and going after people who are in the BDS movement and trying to criminalize BDS and trying to get anti-BDS legislation in the U.S. There's in the U.S., I don't know if you know this, but you can criticize the United States of America, and that's fine. But in a number of states, you cannot criticize Israel and have a contract with the state or with certain cities. All right. So there's a reason that people are going after it. Is it working? Yes, it is. And look, in the U.S., and I'm not a fan of the U.S. I'm certainly not a fan of the much of the right wing, but there are people who are waking up and they're seeing the connections and they're seeing the links and how much money is going to Israel and why and so on, and it is having an impact. It definitely is, and that's why they go after the individuals. That's why they're trying to shape laws. That's why they're trying to criminalize the laws. And it's definitely having impact. All people have to do is just follow the bdsmovement.net, and you'll see all of the various successes that are out there. And there's successes that are quiet successes as well. Like, for example, companies that were thinking. Like Microsoft is one of it's not that was not a quiet success, that was a big success, but there are quiet successes, like companies that were thinking of doing business in Israel now are now not. They think, well, why would I bother opening up an office or a plant or a branch or whatever in Israel when I can do the exact same in China or wherever it is and just not have the headache. So these things are working. They really are working.
Absolutely. I echo what you just said. I just want to go to a statement, not a question, from an anonymous attendee. She's saying, Diana, I've listened to many of your podcasts and speeches. Thank you for all the work that you've done and continue to do. As an Indian Australian medical student, I am inspired to speak out because of you. So thank you.
That's very sweet. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I don't know what more to say other than thank you. Keep speaking out, keep doing what you're doing, and thank you.
And thank you for being this empowering as well. I mean, I've also been following your podcast and it's really fantastic. I encourage everyone to listen to it. It's called This Is Palestine. So
our next episode for this medical student, our next episode, which comes out, I think this coming week, is actually by a doctor who's a Canadian doctor, a Canadian Palestinian doctor who spent 3 months in Gaza, and in this episode, he talks to me about how medicine has just so fundamentally changed in Gaza over the course of the past 2 years because they haven't been able to get in medicine, because they haven't been able to get in equipment. Like, there's just the constant shortages. But the thing that struck me when I saw him, he's an old friend, was and he's always been just tiny. He's never been. He's just a small guy. Was that when I saw him as I was doing the interview, I turned on the camera, and over the course of 3 months, he had lost 22 kilos. So it's 50 pounds. And it just hit me just how much this famine has hit in. And he mentions that he was one of the people that people would bring him food because he's a doctor. And he's one of the people who's privileged. So he said, I didn't have to worry about looking for a meal. People were always coming to me and bringing me food. And so it really hit me. So for whoever it is, this anonymous attendee, I encourage you to listen to it, because Tariq Lubani is the person who is going to inspire you, not me.
Yes, we'll definitely tune in. We'll be waiting for it to be released. It's incredible, like you mentioning that the healthcare system is actually before the genocide it was suffering, even before the genocide started. It's unbelievable. I mean, I was in Gaza just a few weeks before the genocide started. It's I should say it completely transformed after 10 years of not going in there because of the siege, of course. It's well, now it's all history, but But I want to circle back to a question that I asked about the recognition. I mean, you mentioned that recognition could give the Palestinian solidarity worldwide some sort of ammunition, some sort of a drive, a reason, like another reason to kind of continue and build the movement. So, what is the role of the solidarity movement following the recognition? How can we be emboldened by this, although perfunctory statement, but how do we use it? How do we leverage it?
Okay, so there are ways to leverage it. You know, now that they have recognized Palestine, they have obligations as well. And the obligations are to be pushing for them to impose sanctions on Israel for continuing to build and expand settlements. And you know, this is something that you can keep picking up on and keep picking up on and keep picking up on and keep picking up on. And if that's what it is, then that's, you know, if that's what it is, that's what it is. And I would keep doing that. The other thing is, you know, Australia is not going to be the country that puts its neck on the line to stop everything when it comes to Israel. But it can be a country that's going to put its neck on, that is going to say something when it comes to settlements and does something when it comes to settlements. Australia is not a weapons provider to Israel, like massive weapons provider. I don't even know how much of it provides it to Israel. I've never really looked. I think the major weapons are from, that I've looked, is U.S., Italy, and U.S., Germany, and Italy in that order. And so they do have trade agreements. They do have trade agreements. And so again, these things are things that should be pushed, is the issue of sanctions, the issue of cutting ties because of the settlements, etc.
Absolutely. And there is mobilization here around, you know, trading arms. We are sending weapon parts as part of this.
For the F-35, that's right. Yes.
F-35, yes.
Right.
So we are exporting this crucial component of the F-35 that opens the bombed, you know, door to release the bombs. And we've been campaigning outside weapons manufacturers here. There's Besaloy, there's other manufacturers here that are complicit. We also have, you know, headquarters of Lockheed Martins and Elbit everywhere. So we've been picketing. We've been very busy over the past couple of years. How do you think, as young people, we can get our politicians to take us seriously and stop being viewed as radical leftists? I think that's sentiment shared by all Western governments.
I think 100,000 people is not radical leftists. And if it is, there's, you know, then that's who's going to be electing them, right? So, like at the beginning of I guess around the 1 year mark of the genocide, I met with a diplomat who said the following to me. She said, you know, when we have these big demonstrations that come out, yes, there might be, you know, 20,000 people who come out. And that's wonderful. But we're not looking at the 20,000. We're looking at the however many thousand who don't come out. And it's a perverse way of thinking, right? It's like, it's a sick way of thinking, because they're looking for a way to escape rather than at the people who are actually protesting. But when you have 600,000, you can't, like.
Absolutely. There's no argument there. I mean, they're ignoring the vast majority. Yeah.
Exactly. There's no arguing there. There's no, even using her logic, there's no arguing. There's no arguing there. The other thing is that young people get older and young people become voters, or young people already are voters. Young people invest. Young people end up having businesses. Young people, all of these things are things that they're always looking to the younger voters to try to get those younger voters, and I don't think that they're going to ever get those younger voters any longer by simply painting them as the radical left. They're doing it now because they think that they can, but in 5 years' time, there's no way that they're going to continue to paint these people as the radical left. There's just no way. There's just no way.
And it's just mind-boggling the other day reading that statistic, I think it was in the New York Times, that 60% of the 18 to 35 population in the US, they are actively, well, not active, but they are in support of Hamas, not just the Palestinian cause. It's mind-boggling, like how this shift is happening, understanding that the Palestinian resistance is actually pursuing liberation goals, really, that the Palestinians have been calling for decades.
I don't know if I didn't read it that way. I read it that people are not supporting Israel any longer, and that instead they're supporting. They see that they're supporting Palestine and they're supporting Palestinian liberation, and that's not at all surprising, right? It's not. You have everybody from literary figures to celebrities to thinkers. I mean, thinkers have always supported Palestine. To people like every ordinary people, and people feel lied to. That's the other thing. The heavy-handedness with which student protest was crushed led people to really question, coupled with the images that we're seeing. You're seeing images of like kids being shredded and bodies being eviscerated and hospitals being bombed. And no matter how much they tell you that they need to bomb a hospital, like that just doesn't fly anywhere. Those lies just don't go anywhere any longer. They could have possibly gone somewhere maybe once, but after bombing all 36 hospitals in Gaza, it's like, really? Mm. So those lies are not going anywhere any longer. And people in the US and around the world very much feel lied to. They very much feel lied to. And so because of that, this is no longer a question of being the radical left. This is really, this has become a mainstream issue. It's within the US, it's again, I don't know Australia, but within the US, polls were showing that had Kamala Harris taken a different approach on Gaza, that she probably would have won the election. But because she took the same tired approach on Gaza, she lost a lot of votes. People wanted to see a different stance. So this isn't just the radical left. This is very much a position of it's a mainstream position now.
This is interesting about the Kamala Harris bit, but I do want to go to the international legal system that we thought serves humanity to the better. I mean, what good does ICJ, the ICC, the UN, what good are they if they couldn't stop the genocide in Gaza for the past 2 years? Just buying into these really propaganda, or is it just business as usual? That's how it is. That's how the system is.
Wait. Let's back up. Whoa. Yeah, I want to back up because people get really upset and they're like, "Oh, the whole system is broken." No, Netanyahu just went to the United States, right? He just went to the U.S., right?
Yes.
Where else has Netanyahu gone over the course of the past 2 years? Okay. His world has shrunk to this big. This was a prime minister that was going all over the world. There are now 125 countries that he cannot go to. Not only are there 125 countries that he cannot go to, when he traveled to the US, he deliberately went in a way that tried to avoid the airspace of a number of European countries. And that's for a proper reason, because he's afraid that because there is a written arrest warrant out for him. Yoav Gallant has not left the country except to go to one country, which is the United States of America. That's it. Their worlds are becoming so small, so small, so small. All right. When we talk about the international legal system, the only thing that has worked over the course of the past 2 years is the international legal system. Yes, the enforcement has not. I fully agree with you. But the enforcement has never worked. Look at Iraq. In Iraq, they went to war without the approval of the United Nations, and they decimated that country. They totally decimated Iraq. So the international enforcement system has never worked. It has never, ever worked. At the same time, when we look and step back and see that there's now a global movement to try to stop Israel, that's largely because of this international legal system, this language that we're all speaking. Now, I'm not delusional to think that this is like the be all end all tool. I'm not that delusional. I don't think that this is the only thing that we have, but I do think that even if you look at the flotilla as people were being kidnapped, they're being abducted. All of these people were saying, they were all using the same language. We are in international waters. We're being illegally abducted. This is a violation of international law. Like, they're using the language of international law because they want to appeal to people. So all to say that yes, the enforcement mechanism is terrible, and it always has been terrible because it's subjected to the laws of power. But we, as the global system of people, we're the ones who are actually changing everything. And when I see somebody like Netanyahu, whose world has now shrunk to the place where he can go to Hungary, and he can go to the United States, and that's it. And he has to be able to do so. And soon he's not going to be prime minister. And how's he going to go? It's going to be really fun to watch.
Thank you for that helpful answer. It's very interesting to look at it from that perspective. Sometimes we just miss out on those little things that can give us really hope into the future. I want to end on the last couple of questions, if I may, Diana. Madeline is saying that I remember Israel used to falsely market itself as progressive to get Westerners on their side. From what you've said so far, I presume they're not even trying that tactic anymore. Is that right?
They still are. They still try. They say that they're doing this because if they don't, then all these crazy Muslims are going to invade Western Europe. Yeah, it's racist.
Yeah, I still hear that. And it's been going on like ever since Ben-Gurion. We remember that, what they said, the Zionist leadership. The last question is, how do you see the next, oh, wow, that's a very difficult question. How do you see the next 6 to 12 months playing out? I mean, I can't even see 2 hours ahead of me. So for the people of Palestine and for the movement around the world, Catherine is saying, I keep praying for the tipping point. I believe it will come, but how far off do you think it is?
All right. So it's hard to answer, because it's really hard to answer because I think that Israel's just done so much, so much to devastate Gaza. They really have. And just today, they announced that anybody who remains in Gaza City is going to be considered to be a combatant, which they can't do. And so it's hard for me to predict. It's really hard for me to predict. For the movement, we have to keep going. That's it. We just have to keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And we have to keep going because we can't forget the Israelis are going to do the exact same thing in the West Bank. They've killed it's been like 1,047 people that they've killed in the West Bank. And what's happening there is also terrifying. Of course, not the same scale. It's not nothing like what's going on in Gaza, but we just have to keep going. We have to keep going. I really am worried about God. I can't say enough about how worried I am. One of the reasons that when you look back, I've been looking back at the past 2 years, and when I look back, one of the immediate targets that Israel hit was the medical system, and there was a reason. And this is again for the medical student. One of the reasons that they hit the medical system so quickly was because if you think of what needs to be in place for a society to survive, you need to have a medical system. And that's why they targeted it so quickly and so hard. And so here we are now, 36 hospitals later, all of them been bombed, with 1,200 of the medics have been imprisoned. I think it's 120 have been killed. Yeah, I think it's 120 have been killed. 1,200 have been imprisoned. And it's like, and there's a reason. There's a reason. And they don't allow the anesthesia, like they don't allow medicine. There's a reason. It's because that's one of the ways of committing genocide is to make sure that people can't sustain life. And so this is why they're targeting the medical system. So fast forward 6 months. Yes, the doctors have been scrappy and they've been doing everything. And they, in this podcast that you'll listen to next week, you'll hear from Tarek about how they were using everything just to create mattresses. You'll hear about how they were like finding anything just to create like little shelters. You'll hear about how they were grinding up crazy drugs just to be able to give some form of a painkiller to people. And at the same time, you think, how scrappy can people be? How scrappy, like in 6 months' time, how scrappy can each of these hospitals be? How is it that women are going to be able to give birth or have enough breast milk to feed their children, or to have enough water, or to have enough sanitation? So I'm really, really, really worried. I'm really worried, and I don't. It terrifies me when I think when I try to fast forward. So all to say, we just have to keep going. We have to keep going.
I really want to follow up on this what you said, Diana, if I may. I mean, I have been hearing all these sentiments, and the medical infrastructure is important. The air is also unbreathable.
Toxic.
The soil is toxified. Yeah. The water is toxified. Like Gaza is. I mean, Gaza was declared unlivable in 2019 or 2020. I mean, even before the genocide. Like, so to your point, like, how do we maintain hope as we mobilize for Palestine and advocate for Palestine? How do we stay hopeful?
Look, people around the world. I don't like creating Palestinians into these mythical figures, because there's nothing mythical about us, and we shouldn't have to create this like sumud, this extra like. I think that's dehumanizing as well. And people around the world have this will to survive, and Palestinians also have a will to survive. So people have been looking for ways to survive, even though they shouldn't have to, right? They shouldn't have to. So people have been coming up with ways to do everything to survive, and at the same time, they shouldn't have to, right? They shouldn't have to be forced to be in a position where they're looking for anything to be able to survive. So it's the human condition. It's our human condition to want to survive. It's our human condition to want to have a better future. And so we're no different than anybody else. We are no different than any other people. We've just been, as I said from the beginning, the weight that has been put on us, everything from challenging the laws and showing the futility of the system, to the media, to this idea of freedom of expression. All of that has been put on our shoulders, on our shoulders, and yet we still keep going, So the amazing thing is that I think back all the time to 1948, and I think back because my parents were both born before 1948. And I think about how what Israel did in 1948 was so justified. Right? It's not justified, but it got so justified by the world that it became totally, like what they did was totally erased and just ignored. And the only thing, Ahmed, that we had was we had one another. That was the only thing that we had. That's what kept us going. We had one another you in Australia, me in Palestine or in Canada or wherever it was. And that's our hope, right? Is that even as we're watching this, that we have one another and we're going to have to keep relying on one another and keep like lifting each other. Because if we don't, that's the scary part. It's our human condition to want to stay alive and to survive. And we're going to need it. We do need one another. That's why I keep saying, keep going, keep going, keep going.
Absolutely. And we're stronger together, and we need to continue to collaborate together and work together. But really, I really can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for this brilliant insight and your time with us today. Hopefully we can have more of those conversations. And like I said, have you in person at some point.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Palestinian Show, Red Inverted Triangle. If you'd like to learn more about Palestine, or if you'd like to get involved in the Palestine Solidarity Movement, please follow Palestine Justice Movement Sydney on Instagram or Facebook. And keep tuning in to Red Inverted Triangle. My name is Ahmed. I will see you next time.